She stood there, watching me pack my last bag. No tears, no apology, not even a word. She thought, like every time before, I'd cool off and come back. But this time something changed. It wasn't anger, it wasn't revenge, it was clarity. After years of forgiving, of swallowing my pride, I realized she never feared losing me, because I never walked away until that morning. She had no idea I'd already closed the joint bank account, booked a rental 200 miles away, and left one final message she'll never forget. I wasn't always the kind of man who walked away. For most of my life, I believed in second chances, and third, and maybe even fourth. See, when I married her, I thought love meant patience. It meant working through the hard days, forgiving the rough edges, and trusting that the good days would come back around. And for a long while, I held on to that belief with both hands. The first time she lied, it was about something small. A dinner with an old friend. Just a friend, she said. I let it go. Even though something inside me tugged at the truth, I chose trust over suspicion. The second time, it was a canceled trip. She claimed her mother was sick. Later, I found out she was in Nashville for a weekend getaway. I confronted her and she cried, said she needed space. I blamed myself. Maybe I was too boring, too predictable. Maybe I'd let the fire die, so I forgave her again. That became a pattern. She would do something secretive, thoughtless, sometimes cruel, and I'd sit with the hurt, swallow it, hide it beneath late-night walks and whiskey on the porch, and when she finally apologized, I'd open the door again. Tell myself, this time it'll be different. I guess I thought that's what men do. We endure, we protect, we provide. But I never asked myself this: who's protecting me? I thought I was being strong, but in truth, I was just afraid of starting over at 61, afraid of the silence in a house where laughter used to live. Still, every time she crossed the line, I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed to believe that the woman I married was still in there somewhere. Looking back now, I see it clearer than ever. I wasn't loving her. I was surviving her. And that's the kind of truth that hits you slow, like an old wound finally throbbing in the cold. But one night, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not hate, just a quiet knowing. She thinks I'll forgive her again, but this time, I won't. And that, my friend, was the beginning of the end. It didn't stop with the little things. After a while, her betrayals weren't even hidden. They became jokes, games. Once, I found a message on her phone. It wasn't even locked, just sitting there, open thread from a man named Tony from work. Flirty, personal, too personal. When I asked, she laughed, said it was just harmless fun, a silly prank to mess with me. A prank? That word sat heavy in my chest like a stone in cold water. All those years I spent being careful with her heart. She was playing games with mine. She'd tell our friends how sensitive I'd become, how I read too much into things, as if the weight of my silence was something to mock. But what she didn't see was the way I began to watch her differently, not with anger, not even with sadness, but with a quiet kind of distance. Like someone slowly waking up from a long, confusing dream. She kept doing things she knew would hurt. Not because she was cruel, but because she thought I'd never leave. She'd push and I'd bend, she'd lie and I'd swallow it. She'd test and I'd stay, because in her mind my forgiveness was a guarantee, and maybe I helped build that illusion. Every time I chose peace over confrontation. Every time I convinced myself it's not worth the fight. Every time I fixed my own broken pieces in silence. But the truth is, it was worth the fight. I just didn't know how to fight for myself. Until I started to. That week I stopped reacting. I didn't argue, didn't ask where she was going, didn't chase after the answers I already knew. Instead, I started planning, quietly, patiently. Because the most dangerous man isn't the one who shouts, It's the one who listens, smiles, and waits. She had no idea I was already gone, long before I packed that bag. She still rolled her eyes when I reminded her to call if she'd be late. She still left her phone face down, always on silent. She still took me for granted, like a man who'd always be waiting. Because I always was. That's what broke me the most. Not the messages, not the lies, but the way she looked at me. Like I was harmless, predictable, weak. She'd joke to her sister, "Oh, he'll be fine. He always forgives me." Like my forgiveness was some tired routine. Something she could count on like coffee in the morning. She didn't see the silence for what it was. To her, my calm was submission. My patience, permission. She didn't notice I stopped asking questions, or that I started locking the file cabinet in the garage, or that I moved my name off the second car's insurance. All small things, all invisible if you're not looking. But I was looking, and I saw her arrogance plain as day. How she thought love was a leash, one I'd never cut loose from. There was a time she feared losing me. Early on, back when every touch mattered. But now she thought I was just part of the furniture, always there, always forgiving. I think she even believed she was doing me a favor, like staying with me was an act of grace, as if I didn't know better, as if I hadn't seen the looks she gave other men when she thought I wasn't watching. But I was always watching. And while she grew more careless, more comfortable, I grew colder. Each smile I faked chipped away at the man I used to be. Each lie she told made it easier to let go, and the craziest part? She still thought I'd never leave. She thought this would all blow over, like it always did. She thought I was too old to start over, too tired to fight, too afraid to be alone. She thought wrong. That was the shift. I stopped reacting. No more questions, no more checking the clock when she came home late. No more wondering who she was texting. I just stopped. She'd say something snarky, looking for a fight. I'd nod, maybe smile, then go back to reading. She stayed out late one Friday, didn't call, didn't explain. I didn't ask. The silence? It was deafening, and she noticed. She tried to bait me once, told me she was meeting an old friend from college for lunch. A man. I didn't flinch, just said, "Hope you have a good time," and walked out to mow the lawn. She watched me from the porch, confused, almost scared, because this time I wasn't playing the role she was used to. I wasn't the man who sulked or argued. I wasn't the man who waited up at night, checking his phone, heart racing with doubt. I was calm, too calm, and that terrified her. She started asking where I was going, why I was quieter, why I didn't touch her anymore. But I never answered. Not out of cruelty, but because the answers didn't matter anymore. She'd already written the ending. I was just walking through the final pages. Every morning I made coffee for one. Every night I locked my bedroom door. I even started leaving the house more. Drives through the countryside, visits with old army buddies, afternoons at the lake, and the more I reconnected with the world outside her orbit, the more I realized how much of myself I had given up trying to keep her. She thought I was shutting down, but really I was coming back to life. Still, I said nothing, because words can be forgiven, but silence? Silence lingers. It makes people wonder, makes them nervous, makes them feel what you felt all along, that slow, aching distance. And when I finally left, I didn't slam the door, I didn't write a letter, I didn't even say goodbye, just one bag, one step, and then gone. It wasn't a sudden decision, not some emotional outburst. It was quiet, deliberate. Like turning off a light, one switch at a time. At first, I didn't even know I was planning to leave. I was just surviving, doing little things to protect myself. I started putting away cash, just a few bills from each check, enough to rent a place, maybe a small house outside of town, somewhere peaceful where the noise didn't follow. I called an old friend who worked in real estate. "Just curious," I said. But we both knew what I was really asking. Then I made a list, not of things to pack, but things I wanted to feel again. Respect, laughter that wasn't forced, a sense of coming home instead of stepping into a battlefield. And every night I slept on that list, I felt a little stronger. The hardest part? It wasn't the fear of starting over. It was mourning the man I had been for so long. The husband who waited, forgave, hoped. The man who stayed long after he should have left. That man died slowly, one disappointment at a time, until all that was left was someone who finally said, "Enough." I booked the rental, paid 6 months in advance. I kept it off the main roads out by Willow Creek where the neighbors don't ask questions. I waited for her to leave town for a work retreat. 3 days. That's all I needed. In those 72 hours, I moved everything I owned. My tools, my books, the photo of my father in uniform. I left nothing behind that mattered, only the shell of the man she once knew. And when she returned, there was no note, just silence, just space and a lock changed on a house that was suddenly too big and too empty. That was the final act of love I gave her. Not a goodbye, but the freedom to realize what she'd truly lost. She came home to a ghost, no footsteps in the hallway, no coat on the rack, no scent of black coffee drifting from the kitchen, just silence. At first, she thought I had gone to the store. Then she noticed the photos missing from the wall. The old watch I always wore, gone. The drawer where I kept my documents, empty. It hit her slowly, like cold creeping in through a cracked window. She opened her phone, tried calling me, blocked. She tried texting, delivered but never read. She went to our friends, asked if they had seen me. They hadn't, because I hadn't told a soul. Only one man knew, my old friend Dan, a retired Marine who lived near the cabin I'd rented. He brought me a hot meal and 2 extra blankets that first night. Didn't ask questions, just nodded. That's the kind of silence men like us understand. Back at the house, she spiraled, called my brother, my boss, even the church. But I was already gone, 200 miles north where the mornings were quiet and the air didn't carry her voice anymore. I didn't vanish out of cruelty. I left because I had nothing else to say. After decades of giving, forgiving, and fading into someone else's shadow, I'd finally reclaimed my name. I canceled the joint accounts, sold the second car. My name was still on the title. Even the house? She'd been careless. Signed a refinance deal last year with me still as co-owner. Now the lawyers were handling the rest. I wasn't angry, I wasn't bitter, I was free. And that freedom felt like standing barefoot on fresh grass after a storm, like breathing without weight in your chest. I watched the sun set that first week from my porch. No noise, no drama, no pretending. And in that quiet, I smiled, because I knew, for the first time in years, I hadn't lost anything. She had. At first, she didn't believe it was real. She thought it was some kind of game, that I was bluffing, that I'd come crawling back once I cooled down. But days passed, then weeks, and still nothing. That's when the messages changed, from cold silence to desperation. I got an email, 3 pages long. She called me baby again, said she was sorry, said she didn't mean for things to go this far. She talked about the dinners we used to share, the road trips, even the jokes only we understood. She said she missed me. But missing someone, that's not the same as loving them. It's not the same as respect. Then came the voicemails, from new numbers she borrowed from friends. Her voice cracked. I know I messed up. Please, just talk to me. But I didn't. Because this wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't some cold shoulder meant to teach her a lesson. This was goodbye. Permanent, quiet, final. She even showed up at my brother's house, tears in her eyes, flowers in hand, tried to play the victim, said she was blindsided, that she never saw it coming. That was the most honest thing she said, because she truly didn't. She never thought the man who forgave her every lie, who carried the weight of her silence, who built a life around holding it together, would finally let it fall apart. And not with a scream, not with slamming doors or shouted curses, but with nothing, just absence. That's what broke her. Not my words, but my lack of them. Not the door closing, but the echo of it never opening again. I heard she stopped going to work for a while, that friends stopped answering her calls, that the stories she told didn't add up anymore. Because when the truth finally catches up to a person like her, it doesn't knock. It breaks the mirror. It didn't all come crashing down at once, but little by little the world she built on my forgiveness began to crumble. She tried to keep up the act, told people I just left, that I had a midlife crisis or couldn't handle the pressure. But the folks who knew me, they knew better. Her stories started to unravel. People remembered the time she talked down to me in public, the way she flirted at parties, the way I used to shrink into the background like a man trying not to drown in plain sight. One by one, her allies disappeared. Friends stopped calling, neighbors stopped waving, even her own sister pulled away after learning the full truth. Word gets around, especially in small towns, and when the mask slips, folks see who's been wearing it all along. She tried to start over, dated a younger guy from her office for a while, didn't last. I heard he left after she accused him of cheating. Funny how that works. She moved apartments twice in 1 year, sold furniture online, downsized her life and her circle, and in every picture she posted after that, there was one thing missing. Light behind her eyes. That's the part they never prepare for. It's not the loneliness that breaks you. It's the knowing that when you had someone who stayed through every storm, you chased them out like they were the rain. I wasn't perfect. Lord knows I made mistakes, but I showed up every day until the day I didn't. And now she lives with that echo. Not of my voice, but of my absence. Not of our arguments, but of our quiet mornings. Gone. Some people think the price of betrayal is regret. It's not. It's watching the one person who truly loved you learn to live better without you. And every time she drives past that old house, sees that porch swing still hanging where we used to sit, she'll remember. I was the man who always forgave her, until the day I didn't. I used to think starting over at 61 was a kind of failure, like admitting defeat, like tearing up the blueprint after the house was already built. But now I see it for what it really is. A second wind. In the beginning, it was strange waking up alone. The silence felt heavy. I'd reach over to the other side of the bed without thinking. Old habits die hard, but then came the mornings where I'd open the windows, make 1 cup of coffee, and sit on the porch with no one to perform for, just me and peace. I started taking walks again, 4 miles every evening along the ridge, even picked up fishing on the weekends. Not because I expected to catch anything, but because the stillness reminded me I was alive. I stopped checking my phone, stopped wondering who was thinking about me, and I started thinking about myself. For the first time in decades, I asked what I wanted, where I wanted to go, what made me feel whole. Turns out it wasn't her. It was freedom. It was laughter without tension. It was a quiet house with no eggshells to walk on. I reconnected with old friends, built a shed out back for woodworking, took a road trip down Route 66 in my old truck just because I could. And somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like a man who had been left behind. I became a man who had chosen himself. That's what I want someone listening right now to understand. You're never too old to choose peace, to rebuild, To walk away from something that's been quietly breaking you for years. They say men our age don't change, but I think they're wrong. We don't change because we want to impress anyone. We change because we finally learned what not to accept. So if you're sitting there wondering if it's too late to find yourself again, it's not. Trust me, I thought I was done, but I was just getting started. You know what I've learned through all of this? Kindness, real kindness, has a limit. It's not a bottomless well. It's not a doormat, and it sure as hell isn't weakness. For years, I let her believe my forgiveness would never run out. That no matter what she did, I'd be there, quiet, loyal, predictable. But there's a moment in every man's life, especially those of us who've lived through enough storms, when we realize some people don't change because they've never had to. They grow used to grace, comfortable with second chances, addicted to being rescued. And the moment you stop rescuing them, they call you the villain. But let me tell you something, leaving isn't cruelty, it's clarity. When you've given everything, your time, your love, your patience, and they still toss it aside like it's nothing. Walking away becomes the most loving thing you can do for yourself. That's what this was. Not revenge, not punishment, just a quiet return to dignity. I'm not angry at her anymore, not bitter, not holding on to what-ifs, because I finally understood. You can forgive someone and still choose to never let them back in. And for those listening right now, maybe you've been where I was. Maybe you're there now. Maybe you're still holding on, hoping they'll finally see your worth. Let me say this, you are not hard to love. You're just loving someone who doesn't know how to value you. You don't have to stay just because you always have. You don't owe them your silence, and you don't need their permission to start over. Sometimes the bravest thing an old man can do is walk away with his head high and his soul intact. So this is where the story ends. Not with fireworks, not with fists or shouting matches, but with quiet. And in that quiet, I found myself again. You see, I spent too many years believing that staying was strength, that loyalty meant never leaving no matter how much it hurt. But the truth, real strength is knowing when to walk away and doing it with grace. I didn't leave her to punish her. I left because I finally understood that my peace matters too, that loving someone shouldn't mean losing yourself. She thought I'd forgive her like always. She was wrong, and for the first time in a long, long while, I wasn't afraid of being alone. Because being alone with dignity is better than being together in pain. If you're listening right now and these words sit heavy on your chest, maybe it's because you've carried too much for too long. Maybe you've silenced your needs. Maybe you've been told that's just how marriage is, even when your heart's been slowly breaking. Let me tell you, friend, you're not alone. There's a quiet kind of brotherhood between men who've endured too much and finally said no more. And if you've ever been that man, or are that man right now, I see you. Tell me, have you ever walked away from something you thought would last forever? Or are you still standing in that doorway, bags packed, waiting for permission to leave? You don't need it. You never did. Leave your story in the comments, not for me, but for the next man who needs to hear it. We're older now, but that doesn't mean we're done growing, or healing, or starting over. And before you go, if this story spoke to you, you might want to check out the next video on the left. It's one you won't forget, or tap the video above on the right. It's the most watched one on the channel. And if time's tight today, just hit that follow button so you never miss the next story when it drops. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.